What is good? We're back. I apologize in advance. I've got a little bit of a stuffy nose and a sore throat, so I have a cough drop in. Got some watery eyes. I'm just trying to...
Playing hurt.
Yeah.
Playing hurt. You know, it's week 10. Everybody's a little beat up. No excuses. Mm-hmm. Just wrap that hamstring up and get back out there.
That's right. So
we're not the hamstring. Anything but the hamstring.
Anything but the hamstring, yeah. Some Mucinex and some Ricola. we're keeping it moving. So we got week 11 moves to make here for your pleasure. We got a good one on tap. But before we do that, we did the recap last night. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we moved the recap to Sunday night, and we're doing it. You'll just get that on podcast. And then we do it on Patreon, so those guys can interact if they want to. Had to switch that up a little bit. But I had a question in there that me and Doug were talking about, and I wanted to get Big Co's opinion on it before we get down the road to moves to make here. So a little quick sidebar, potentially, before we get rolling. So
love a good sidebar.
With how New England is playing and with how well Mac Jones, with how well Drake Maye is playing. Drake Maye, obviously Mac Jones playing very well as well. Drake Maye playing extremely well. I'm going out there right now and saying by the time we are doing this in after free agency, especially if they draft or sign somebody even better, that Drake Maye will be QB1 next Dynasty offseason.
Boom. QB1.
What do you think about that? And because I don't think it's even I'm not even upset about it. Like at this point, we're getting Stephon Diggs is there. The QB1 maker is turning him right into QB1. And, he's much younger than all those. We went over it last night. They're all 28, 27, 29, 30 years old, which isn't old by quarterback standard. But Josh Allen, bruiser.
The mobility will turn. Yeah.
So you're turning the clock back and you're getting kind of everything you've seen from kind of a Josh Allen in sort of what Maye can bring to you. So I think that there is going to be a lot of people having that conversation this offseason. So wanted to see what your thoughts were on that. Would you be super opposed to taking him as the 1-1 anytime soon?
No, top three at this point seems like a given. 1-1, 1-2, 1-3. I don't have a problem with the 1-1. I think it was Matt Miller, one of those Millers I saw on Twitter this morning. It's like, Vrabel took the Titans to the AFC Championship with Tannehill. Watch out. He's about to build a monster in New England. And, you and I both, we were all over the Vrabel hiring for the Patriots. Mm-hmm. And especially last year in the rookie season for Dynasty, that is, like a lot of people, Drake Maye kept getting tossed to the back of the line and you took up for him a ton. And it's just happening a lot faster than we could have imagined, right? It's not necessarily just Drake Maye looking good in spurts, but the whole team. I mentioned it too. The over under for the win total I thought was just outrageous, even for an easy, quote unquote, easy schedule. Who cares? You still got to win the games and new coach, new quarterback, but it's just happening so much faster than I could have ever imagined, really. So the combination of Vrabel, because a lot of times a quarterback can be good, but if his team isn't good around him, you don't get that top level production. You could be good, but everything's falling apart around you, then you're really good. But are you a superstar? Like consistently fantasy points. That's all we're talking here is consistent fantasy points.
Right.
And the more you can give me and the more consistent you can give me, those two, come together to make the 1-1 in Dynasty. So the fact that it's going to be obviously if the Patriots continue in this direction, they really are building a monster with what they spent a bunch of money on their defense and they're just completely brand new on offense. And they got, Diggs, right? So what he's working with right now is, a proven yet fairly slowing down tight end physically, but mentally he's there, right? Hunter Henry knows where to be. He ain't blowing past any linebackers these days. Maybe never was, but he was good. He was, so he's got a solid, but quote unquote, don't want to call him unathletic, but he's not 23 years old anymore, right? It's a lot of injuries. He's not out there moving around all surprise. So you got a solid, slow tight end and Diggs and obviously a home run hitting running back and some fill-in players. And, Williams takes the 75-yard shot play to the house. That was an awesome play. But, so it's just all brand new. They swung and missed on a couple of wide receivers 2 years ago in the draft. They come back this year. They're bringing in new players all over the place. The trajectory couldn't be more up. That angle on that line up it's not perfectly straight up, but it's an elevator. It's not an escalator, right? That thing is shooting up. So Drake Maye to the moon, bro.
He's QB1 on the season right now, as according to fantasy data, and Mahomes and Allen have played.
Mahomes just had a bye week, right?
They played last week. Mahomes and Allen both have had a bye.
Yeah,
and Maye has not. But either way, like he's already in the upper echelon of fantasy points a year earlier than anybody thought, coming off of a rookie season where didn't play the whole thing, but looked promising at the end. They've turned this thing around. Diggs doesn't look like he's slowing down necessarily, so they should probably get one more year out of him. We'll see if between Kyle Williams and Boutte looks good. I don't know if Pop Douglas will be, around or not, but he seems like he could be a thing. Henderson's coming on. They keep, they're going to build up that O-line. Right. Yeah. That's kind of what my point was, is like when the excitement builds for whoever or whatever that's going to be, I just feel like this thing is going to go gangbusters. And I was trying to get out in front of it and seeing if it was crazy. And I can't figure out, I can't say that it's crazy. I'm not saying that I necessarily am there right now, but I can't argue with it. And I'm not that far away from it. So I just, first one's in. QB1.
Right.
Maye.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing wrong with being first one in on QB1 for Maye. If, the opportunity costs, right? If the one that it's all come back down to acquisition costs at the moment. Anybody that drafted him at 1.7 in a super flex 2 years ago, fantastic, right? And if you picked him up this year in a super flex startup at the 2.12, 2.9, fantastic. Next year at the 1.1, it's just once you click that button, and in combination with his age, it's probably a great click, because the biggest thing, we move around a lot in Dynasty. We move around like Jonathan Taylor up, Bijan up, we flop wide receivers all over, like
Burrow, Mahomes down.
Right. If you can get that quarterback that can be at the top, his mobility gives you that upper, like the rushing upside, the ceiling of it too. It's not that he's just what I saw an awesome stat. It was like Boutte, and basically the top 3 out of the 4 receivers with QBR when being thrown to, when being targeted, 3 out of the 4 players in the top 4 of the NFL were Patriots. So that's a quarterback stat.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell me that all those guys are just blowing people away with the separation and over expectation on catches and over expectation on yak after they caught it. Like the quarterback rating when being targeted, 3 out of 4 in the league. 3 out of 4 in the league.
Guys love already is just how much he attacks downfield, and they're going to give him so much, which they should. And I don't care really how you get it done, but that's when the stat guys are already kind of all over it. And once all that kind of gets extrapolated and they throw it up against other guys historically, and it's great. This Drake Maye thing is about to explode if it hasn't already. Obviously, he's the MVP favorite right now. And so, that's another layer of this, right? That all goes along with how this QB thing kind of goes. And I know you guys think I'm just some sort of pretty face and some fantasy football fancy boy that sits behind a desk all day. Dream on. At my real 9 to 5, I play a craftsman. So when Brunt boots came a-calling, I knew this was a match made in heaven. I've tried so many different footwear options through my 20 years of working out in the field. And when I finally stumbled across Brunt, I knew it was a wrap. When you're on your feet all day on so many different surfaces from job to job, you cannot put a price tag on comfort and durability. And the first thing I noticed was right out of the box, Brunt boots are top notch. No break-in period, no double pair of socks, no some weird internet method that you figured out to break in your boots faster. None of that. Now, these are my personal favorites, the Omens. And I love my Brunt boots so much. I even wear them when I'm podcasting. Let me pop these bad boys off right now. So this is my boot of choice here. This one's, already been rode hard and put away wet a few times. So, not a fresh, brand new pair, but excellent comfort, excellent durability right out of the box. I can't put an emphasis on that enough. So if you have a hardworking man in your life, Brunt boots and apparel make great gifts that'll keep him comfortable all day on the job. He can even sit behind a desk. I'm wearing them right now. They're extremely comfortable. Even if you're somebody special, isn't in the trades, and you just want to get them a stylish new pair of boots, I cannot recommend Brunt enough. I have a pair for work, and I have a pair that I wear when I'm just trying to go out on the town. These boots are that versatile and that comfortable. Nobody else would just buy a work boot and then wear it out on the town when you're taking your lad or lass out on a nice Friday evening, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen. You put those things away on Friday at 5:00 and you don't pick them up again until Monday at 9. Plus, Brunt is dropping brand new limited edition styles all month long. These styles will sell out so quickly, so make sure to check back all month long and grab yourself a style or color that won't be around for long. With the temps dropping and the holidays coming up, it's time to treat yourself or the hardworking man in your life to real comfort. Skip the throwaway gifts and get something that's built to last. Brunt Workwear. Our listeners get $10 off their entire order with our promo code FFD at checkout. That's bruntworkwear.com. Use promo code FFD. Order today and let them know you heard it on the show. Peace. So, yes, you could make the move to potentially, slide back off Maye, but I don't even if I've got a good team right now, I don't want to. I'm like, hey, maybe we could move to one of these. Maybe I can move to Lamar and get paid or something like that. But exactly what he offers me every week is how many leagues have you seen just won by the Josh Allen team and three or four other really good teams? And there's nothing you can do about it because it's hard to compete against those upper echelon quarterbacks. And Josh has been the one that's been, outside of Mahomes for a really long stretch unless it was a season and a half or so, what he had. Yeah. The consistency of Josh Allen in rosters for fantasy championships has probably been pretty high. Lamar has been there as well, but we've seen some more up and downs from him. So that's Josh Allen just broke the record for career rushing touchdowns for a quarterback. So there's your fantasy points right there, and he's not even 30 yet, right? So, but to your point about being like, hey, let's check that box, maybe the first one to go on air and say QB1 Drake Maye. If you sent right, well, because here's the story. It goes back to that story between me and you a couple years ago, 5 years ago now. But we were like Diggs versus Julio Jones, and I was like, Casey, let's trade Diggs for Julio Jones because we're trying to win a championship this year. And you're like, that's fine, but next year Diggs is going to be more valuable than Julio. And so if you sent Drake Maye, if you sent Josh Allen for Drake Maye right now, the guy probably says no, but probably says yes. He probably takes your Josh Allen and gives you Drake Maye. And if that's probably not a hot take at all today, but what, in a couple months, what Jaden Daniels did it. Right. Jaden Daniels was 1-1-ish. If he 1-1-1, Josh Allen still was a lot of 1-1s. I'm not going to, but I saw Jaden Daniels go 1-1 in the startup. And I'm not going to lie. It still surprised me. It surprised me that somebody didn't click Josh Allen in 1-1. But when, like you said, when everything, because there's so many moving parts, there's so much to digest in the season, especially in Dynasty, because most Dynasty players don't just have one team. Even if they're new to Dynasty and they still have their 8 redrafts, which is what led them to Dynasty to begin with. All those stats you just talked about and the way it's going to be put together and the stories it's going to be built on Drake Maye. He's already top 3 in MVP voting. Maybe he was number 1. Dan Patrick was talking about this morning. Yeah. I think right now this morning he was, which is of course because they're 8-2. They're leading the division.
Mahomes, right. Mahomes had the bye week. He was number 1 in MVP odds 2 weeks ago. So yeah. If you want to get wild and crazy, as you send your Josh Allen for Drake Maye and ask for a second round pick, see what you get.
Yeah, and we'll get the meat of the show going here in just a minute. But Jaden Daniels and Jaden Daniels is going to be just fine because of good character, wants to play well as long as he doesn't get just marred with injuries, going to be a solid player. So it wasn't necessarily really even that much of a mistake to draft him in the upper end of 6 last year or whatever. He'll bounce back and he's going to give you the points that area should get you. But what Drake Maye provides right now is like with Vrabel, I feel extremely comfortable and stable with the situation. Whereas in Washington, it felt like I was on a little bit of an island of saying, I felt like this was a little bit of a fugazi of what they are in general as a team. And I don't feel that way with the Patriots. Now, obviously playing a bottom end schedule right now, but they're beating good teams. And so with the Commanders, it's like, you could see some cracks here and there, and then they went all in again this year, which is fine. And I'm down with it, but still an old roster. Right. And so, there are some old pieces in New England, but they went right in and started putting pieces together that fit what Braves does. And so I feel a little bit more comfortable with that kind of situation, and Jane Daniels gonna be just fine. So anyway, all right, let's jump into it here after a non-quick sidebar. Just wanted to get a little more Drake Maye talk in here. All right. So it's week 11. Yeah, we got moves to make for your pleasure. We're going to kind of look at the market here, but we've been sort of looking into the market on the contender side of thing the last couple of weeks. But I wanted to turn your attention here, a little bit further down the line. We've kind of talked where the advantages lie in Dynasty currently, and always being active and always trying to find value around the league with teams that have placed bad value on good players for silly reasons is always something that you should be pursuing. That's always going to be one of the biggest advantages that you can have in your leagues. Once you get to know your league mates, you're going to know guys who are just like, Dak sucks. So, whatever. He's going to be benched in a couple weeks for Milton. So, whatever.
This is true. This is so true.
So it's just, and not, if you're in a league of sharp people, they remove that, but that's, not a whole lot of leagues consistently from top to bottom. So you usually find those guys. Anyway, but what we also should be pursuing is living on those fringes, because the advantages in Dynasty are evaporating somewhat because there's not a whole lot of things that take a whole lot of people by surprise. Now, there's always things that evolve, but value kind of gets sorted out for the most part, where at least the consensus lies, and it's harder to take advantage of that in some aspects. But some of the smaller micro type advantages can turn into big gains. And we kind of been talking about that in different ways through the last couple of weeks of this show. So what I want to do is take a look at players that the contracts are kind of coming up for next season, or maybe they're in a contract and they could be cut for some dead money in a new place. And the average owner right now isn't looking this far ahead at this point in the season, right? Because the other Dynasty talking heads that they listen to hadn't turned their attention to it. And that's just kind of how this market moves, just like any news cycle. Once eyeballs get turned that way, then everybody, and in a couple of weeks, there will be some more talk about the free agent class of 2026, right? So let's get ahead of it. And, this maybe isn't the most contender heavy show necessarily, but, I wanted to kind of start with the running backs, and maybe we'll get to some other players, but I think there's some advantage of looking down the road before everybody else does right now, and before everybody else realizes that some of these players might be at the end of their contracts and be in a new place and maybe a more advantageous place. Maybe it's nothing, but most of these guys aren't terribly expensive right now. And so we could call it sort of stashes, but they're not like guys that you could necessarily pick up off the waiver wire, especially in Dynasty with deeper things, but they're fringe guys that you could probably pick up in trade dealings on your, in your findings along the way of picking up trades. So just want to kind of put some of these guys on the radar. And now we talked about Javonte and ET and Rico. Those guys are all contract guys. We talked about those in the last couple shows. And Brees is always a favorite of this show. Still a top tier. I've been redoing my rankings, and I can't get him out of like my top 6 or 7 RBs, right? He's still that damn good. You should be pursuing him, right? But, those 3 guys we just mentioned, Javonte, ET, Rico, nobody cared about those players. Even when they got a new home, nobody cared about those players. And ET didn't get a new home. He stayed in the same place, but nobody cared about him because he was dead. And that's just how the cycle of this goes. But like with Javonte and Rico, there was no love or confidence in any of them being major players in any Dynasty role this season for most people. And now they've turned into major players and having major roles. And whether it's helping you win or helping you gain value, both very valuable commodities here. And regardless of when you made your money on Rico or Javonte, if you sold them, it really doesn't matter because you turned a profit. Yes, if you would have continued to hold, the profit could pretty much has continued to grow.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I'm talking about here, right? Because there's players that are either down like ET was, and he's in a contract year. We're talking about buying him. But like Kenny 3-6 is a down player right now who I love. And just for whatever reason, health, maybe running style, I don't know, but not getting the love. So what we want to look at is all these players. And I'm going to list some off, Big Co, and then we'll circle back and you can kind of pick some that really catch your eye here.
Well, before you just talked about a couple.
Sure.
So I don't want to listen before. Let me talk a little bit before you. I know you like Rico Dowdle, right? Gamecock. Never really impressed me as a Gamecock fan, but maybe because we spent the last 10 years being horrible on the offensive line, wasn't his fault. Right. But even still last year in Dallas, like a lot of volume driven / Dak was your quarterback sometimes. CD Lamb's out there protecting you from the defense, his attention, et cetera, et cetera. And he had a good season, but it wasn't like, oh my God, did you see Rico Dowdle yesterday? Like nobody said that. It was like, and it was all expectation, man. Like we didn't expect anything. Like you were like, Rico Dowdle's a good pickup. Of course, there was just limited potential. Like there was nobody there to take the job, right? Him and, so like, this year, he goes over to Carolina. There's Chuba, and there's Dowdle, and then there's Trevor Etienne, and of course, it's Dave Canales, and we want that running back, but like it was Chuba, and then right? But you would never have been able to convince me, and probably most sane people that actually watch football, that Rico Dowdle was about to do that. We even doubted it after his first 2 games because it was against the Dolphins and the Cowboys.
And the fact of just like, hey, when Chuba comes back, he's going to get his job back because that's just normally how this works.
And he did the first game.
He kind of did. And then they were like, hey,
Yeah. They were stalling out and they were like, no, actually we do want, because the next game, Dowdle got 9 carries in the first quarter.
Right.
So, and the rest is, and now Dowdle's a stud. Right. So like, yes, that really took off on you. And, so like that's, you couldn't have convinced me that was going to happen no matter how hard you tried. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then that's why I've been kind of, interested. We've talked about Rico last week. But, somebody like Kenny 3. So I kind of have this broken down into a couple tiers and, you got Kenny 3-6, who's a household name and we think is good. I could see a new place giving him some run, and if he could stay healthy, be good. But the price is going to come down on Kenny, and there's going to be a lot less people interested because we've done this song and dance multiple times, and it just hasn't quite come to fruition, right?
Well, and the opposite just happened for Kenny. Like the Dowdle expectations, and Javonte, like you had expectations for Javonte, and we talked about it in the mocks all season long because it was the 18th round.
Yeah,
and it crept up, and it crept because they didn't sign somebody, and then free agency and this and that. Like where he ended up, even pre week 1 was so far down the list. Still, he climbed, but he never got anywhere decent because it was Javonte and left for dead on the Cowboys, and but like. The expectation for Kenny 3-6, we all thought Kenny Walker was about to come out and slam. So now you got the opposite effect happening for Kenny, where now we're trying to justify how far we could get Javonte and Rico Dowdle up our rankings. How, we're trying to drag them back up out the cellar. Well, here comes Kenny sliding down, the expectations where he's about to be, if you went wide receiver heavy and Kenny's 3-6 was your first running back, you're pissed.
Sure. Yeah, of course. And, I still believe in the talent. I don't really know exactly why it's not working out. There's certain times where he has looked really good in the season and it's just not working, but the value is going to go down like just real quick. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on like looking at trades like we normally do here. This is more of just a theory conversation of who you should might be looking at. But just Kenny Walker today traded for Bashal Tutin in a third, right?
Exactly.
Which, and so there's some options of, there's some other bigger trades for Kenny in here, but just an idea of somebody who's like, get this guy off of my team, and hey, like you said, for all of these guys that we're talking about, there's an opposite end of, somebody's real excited about Bashal Tutin next year because they believe all the way in their plums that he's going to be their guy, where Kenneth Walker could get signed to the Jacksonville Jaguars next year and be the guy, right?
Yeah. And I got no problem. I got no problem if you want to be excited about Tootin. But that's a perfect example. The NFL swing these guys around. If you, like the Dowdle situation, no chance Dowdle was taking Chuba's job. I mean, so like Kenny 3-6, yeah, man. I'll send 2 threes over right now to see how mad you get at me. And
right?
Did we just start a conversation? Are you about to give me Kenny 3-6 for 2 threes because you're mad? Like, oh, I need to give you a 4th as well, right?
And
like,
it's not going to be everybody, because you can look at all these trades and see that there's a bunch of different value on them, but there's an opportunity, right? And so that's what we're looking at right now. Opportunities to. It takes you got to be like, hey, I have confidence in this guy. It's just not working for some reason, and there's plenty of rationale and reasons of why things don't work out for certain guys, and then a change of scene, and all of a sudden they're really, really solid players, right?
That's right. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I could offer 2 threes for Kenny 3-6 right now, or if you're looking at it, listening to us, you're like, well, that's a terrible offer. That would be disrespectful. Draft picks do amazing things for people sometimes, and especially when your feelings are hurt. Like if you send out 2 threes for Kenny 3-6 and a guy comes back yelling at you, just be like, man, I'm sorry, dude. I saw the trade go down just like this in one of my leagues, and I felt like I offered it. I was like, I'd give that. So I offered it to you. Don't be mad. I'm just checking you. Draft picks are fun, and I wanted to see if you wanted any, and then keep it, make it light. Right. If you make somebody mad, you make them mad, but you got to shoot that shot.
Yeah, you might as well. So Kenny 3-6 is up for a contract. Dobbins is a one and done potentially in Denver here, but nothing extremely exciting there, but a solid running back of obviously doing good things. Had a nice run in the beginning of the season, but the Chargers kind of fell off. We'll see how the back end of the season goes. But Dobbins is a solid player who's on a contract. Like somebody's probably not trading necessarily Dobbins to you. He wouldn't be the top of my list of guys to go get, but just bringing awareness that his ride in Denver may come to a close here, and he might get a different opportunity. Really, we got robbed of what J.K. Dobbins could be, because you look at how good he is right now of what is kind of missing on the high end.
His physical ability is not there, but his ability to read the hole and be patient, his eyes are there.
He can be a productive back still. That's more or less what I'm saying here.
His eyes are there, but his legs are like, my theories are that J.K. Dobbins, he's tailed off this year. He tailed off last year. Like he can't even train hard enough to get ready because he's scared he'll get hurt.
Right.
And I have no, that's just me and my alt, because I don't know if I pull for a guy harder and I would trade for him less in Dynasty. You know what I mean? Like I want the world for J.K. Dobbins, because I know how good he was, and if you can see how well he's playing right now after 2 different injuries that you usually don't come back from, it's freaking Achilles and a running back. And that's after he had his knee replaced, right? He's all, you can hear the titanium while he's running.
Right.
He shouldn't even be able to do what he's doing. So I wouldn't trade much for J.K. Dobbins in Dynasty. I'd take him in redraft until the wheels fall off. But
sure.
I hope he crushes, man, but I can't give it up. And for every single game that he stays healthy and collects game checks, I'm happy for him.
Yeah, no, I mostly mention him because just the contract is up and he's on a 1-year deal. And, here's Noah Gray and a 27th third for Dobbins. There's a 2 for Dobbins, right?
I'll take Dobbins over Noah Gray in a third. I really would.
Right. And that's what, if there's an opportunity there and he's going to go somewhere else, and maybe it's not as good as Denver, maybe it's worse, who knows? But so Dobbins, Pacheco is up for a deal, he's been a little banged up and injured. I felt like there were some parts and pieces coming back. He wouldn't be at the top of my list for guys to necessarily approach here either. But just throwing it out there, Pacheco could be in a new place with maybe a little bit more opportunity and a whole other season to get healthy.
Yeah, I think if Pacheco moves teams, his dynasty value is going to tank, and you can pick him up for super cheap. And at that point, I'd be willing to buy.
Right.
I don't know.
The tires. Let's see what's up.
Is he going to be any good without Patrick Mahomes handing him the ball and Andy Reid calling the plays? I don't know, but he runs hard, and he's going to be a daggone 18th round pick when he leaves the Chiefs. Right. If he doesn't go to one of those top 5, oh my God, places, and none of those guys are going to bring him in to be the lead dog anyway. He would have to get, they come in, be a part of the committee, hey, we know you've been on teams that have won before, blah, blah, blah. And then there's week 2, there's an injury, and all of a sudden Pacheco's the lead back for the Bills. Now we're talking.
Right. But if you look around there, right, Pacheco, Hunt, Elijah Mitchell, all free agents for the Chiefs next year, right?
Oh, the Chiefs tried to trade for Breece Hall. Their boys are about to make a move.
Right. And so, Brashard Smith, get some love.
Weapon. He's still got.
We don't know if he's going to ever be the guy, but he could rotate in there and have some juice. But spot for the Chiefs potentially open.
Yeah.
All right. Then
Rashad Smith's got a long way to go to be an NFL running back. Right now, he's a weapon.
Right. So here were 2 that I really wanted to point out was Brian Robinson and Tyler Allgeier.
Now we're talking.
Both guys, I think, are guys that could be like we're seeing Rico Dowdle's kind of have been and Javonte Williams have been, get a new place. We've seen both of those guys have nice spots. They're productive when they're used as a workhorse. I think B-Rob, looks pretty good as a San Francisco 49ers, and a lot of people look good as a Niner, but he's had good spots as a Commander last year. Odd that they traded him, to be honest with you.
They might want him back.
Right. This is, and the season went to shit.
Hey, didn't realize, what grass wasn't greener. B-Rob's actually pretty solid, and we could convert some first downs,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, listen, your season went to shit, so it is. But then Allgeier, the other guy, look, the Cowboy, Rico was a Cowboy and made, didn't really make a ton of money, but made some noise and then went into Carolina and has since made more noise, right? And is probably going to get a contract somewhere to be a guy next year. And then Javonte came in, and I don't know if they're going to re-sign him or not. They don't seem super interested in paying a guy. So if a B-Rob or an Allgeier rolls into Dallas next year for that $3.5 million, that could be just awesome roles. And these are 2 guys right now that, unless you're the Bijan owner or the CMC owner with those guys, obviously both of them have had okay game. I mean, Allgeier had a nice game to end it in the London game here. But nobody really gives a shit about those guys. But those are good, solid. We're not saying they're game breakers and they're elite players, but they could turn into really good fantasy assets. And nobody's going to fight you that hard when you add them to a trade. They're not going to be like, oh, well, now I need some higher upper echelon guy. And that's kind of the point of what I'm doing here is let's go see if there's some guys here that we are interested in. And B-Rob and Allgeier that are contract. They're probably not going to be where they are. Now, I could see Atlanta saying, hey, we're going to bring Allgeier back just to back up Bijan again, right? Because we know what we got in them. But they could also be like, hey, we got Bijan. We can draft another running back or sign. For sure. We could sign Chris Rodriguez, who's on this list, and he could probably give us what Allgeier's given us. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you hit the nail completely on the head there. I think as long as the Allgeier guy isn't on the Bijan guy's team, completely gettable. Now if you have Bijan, I've found on my teams with Bijan that the guy has wanted more than Allgeier's worth because they saw me trying to get that backup stack.
Sure.
And they tried to hold it against me several times. But what you're talking about is the potential for them to fall in the lap of a Cowboys type situation or, going back up Chase Brown next year on the Bengals and Chase Brown get hurt, blah, blah, blah. Maybe Dowdle, you pick him up now for still pretty cheap, and he stays in Carolina because Dave Canales is like, winning was fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Chuba's got 4.5 dead if they want out of him. Right.
That ain't a lot.
It's
not. Nobody wants to give a running back 4.5 dead, but in this day and age salary cap, you're not playing the quarterback yet. Blah blah. There's a lot of money to be. We just talked about that about some other stuff, especially running backs. If there's the salary cap keeps going up. If NFL owners want to write the check, it can happen, But yeah, I love the Allgeier call and the B-Rob call. I think he's probably easier to get from the CMC owner than an Allgeier from the Bijan guy. But I like both of those. I like the idea. I like the process on that a ton. And maybe if the McCaffrey guy is top 2 in the league and he's headed for the championship hunt, that might be different,
Yeah, like I said, Allgeier just ended that game really strong yesterday, so it's probably not the best time to go. But if he goes back into the ether in any other week or two, just know that his contract is up. That's a productive guy who could be in a 1A role or really take, like I said, if either one of those two guys, if Dallas doesn't want to pay another running back and they're like, hey, bring Tyler Allgeier down here, give him $3.5 million for a year and we'll see what happens. He's going to put up Javonte like numbers. I think so. I think he's at least in the realm of where Javonte Williams is. I know everybody loved Javonte as a prospect, but Allgeier got some love too, and was a productive running back. And we've seen him be a solid player. So
definitely.
Same with B-Rob. So then we got Najee, who's coming off an injury, who, everybody hates him. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to LA for another season here, for cheap. Right.
Yeah. A guy that big, with his size and weight, I'm going to need to see something out of him before I'm not
terribly interested in, but I'm just,
but
I
next year in a startup, when he's a 24th round pick,
scoop
all day long. Day long.
Some other ones, Rachaad White, right?
Yeah.
We've seen him, I don't think he's a great grinder, but like he's on somebody who can, who wants to throw it to him and check it down to him, get him some opportunities, spell somebody for 8-12 attempts a game, get him 3 or 4 or 5 check downs. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, listen,
I bought him for a 3 basically coming into this season, and it's been fantastic. And I think by the end of the season, you'll probably be right back there where you could buy him for a 3 and just see what happens.
If Bucky comes back healthy, he'll go back.
Exactly.
The Bucky breakout killed his value. He was borderline worth a first. Bucky comes along, he dies, and then Bucky comes back this year, gets hurt, and we saw a couple, like Dave Canales had Rachaad White being a stud. Obviously, Baker Mayfield was out there, and we didn't know he was turning into a butterfly yet, but all that thing played out, and that offense led. Rachaad White is a good enough pass catching running back to have he's going to be in the NFL for 5 more years. Rachaad White can play as long as he wants to in the NFL, catching balls. Mm-hmm. And when he was on an offense with a budding star of Baker Mayfield and Dave Canales, before Bucky got there, he was a mid-range RB1 based on volume and pass catching.
Yeah.
Now, does he get the chance to be an RB1 again? Probably not. But in this, but he's in the middle of it right now because people get hurt, dude. So I love the idea of letting Rachaad White's value come back down and scooping him back up again. I just actually sold him in one of our leagues in a big package and got a first next year from a contending team who has Bucky and Sean Tucker.
Right.
He had Bucky and Tucker and so there was a bunch of players in there, and he's a contender. So it's a late first, but it was helping my team. Right. And Rachaad White's hurting my team this year because my team, Burrow and Neighbors, et cetera. And so I wasn't going anywhere. And all of a sudden I'm scoring points because I got a couple of good players. I got Gibbs and stuff like that. And it's like, all right, well, let me get Rachaad White out of my lineup because I'm down there. Like, I think I'm ahead of you for a draft. I'm in the 1-2 spot if the season started today. If the season ended today, and I'm like, let me clear some points off my starting lineup real quick and get me a couple draft picks.
Sure.
But even though I just sold Rachaad White in a special window, right? The Tua Bucky owner while Bucky's hurt and he's trying to win. Like the combination added up for a good trade.
But that's also
I like buying Rachaad White later.
But yeah, exactly. That's also why you buy White, because if he can get in the right role in the right spot, he can have standalone value if you need him. But he also, if he comes in to be the guy, can shine. And it's been up and down a little bit, but we had some huge weeks from Rachaad White,
of course.
Gainwell's another guy, which, not super sexy, but probably really free. We saw one game where he had 19 attempts and he was averaging like 6.2 yards a carry. He's probably not going to get a huge role anywhere, but just a name to monitor where if you're making trades, try to pick up Gainwell for free and see if he goes somewhere else and just, could maybe get you a little bit of love. These aren't huge names, but like, Allgeier and B-Rob were guys that I'm a little more excited about, but like Chris Rodriguez is on this list. And like, if Chris Rodriguez has gotten opportunities to be a guy, he's not bad. Right. So he's free as hell right now. So it's just Gainwell and Chris Rodriguez when they've got that's what the second list of guys was, like the B-Robs, Allgeiers, Najee's, which we, like you said, got to see Gainwell, Chris Rodriguez, Rachaad White. When these guys have gotten roles, they've been productive players. While some of them aren't the sexiest, biggest names, but that's what we're looking for. Like I said, the fringes, the edges of just no players really care about those guys. And a lot of the times, maybe I wouldn't necessarily care about those guys. But the fact that we're potentially going into a contract situation where, those guys could be anywhere else and fall into a big backup role or potentially even a starter role for a couple of those guys. Why not? And that's just kind of where I want to turn the attention to on this show and just shine a light on it.
Yeah. Well, those two guys in particular, like you said, they're absolutely free. Before the season started, I was big on the Washington backfield, the ancillary pieces, even before B-Rob got traded and kind of before Merritt got there in the draft, right? Like they just, we saw a couple of good things out of Rodriguez. We saw a good couple of things out of the other guy that made some plays this week. It just, and of course that was before Jaden Daniels got hurt, but like it was just some cheap pieces of the backfield, right? And Gainwell goes out and has a great game when given a starter's role. Mm-hmm. Probably surprised everybody but his mama, and goes back and like couldn't care less about him already. But if you got one of those 4 flex leagues, and Gainwell is probably never finds himself into an RB1 discussion on a team. But again, in the middle of the season, Jaylen Warren was hurt. They didn't really have anybody else, and you're getting perfect combination. A-Raj is the quarterback, and he's like, "Hey, I got a veteran little satellite back right here. I'm gonna let him run. I don't give me no rookie in here. Give me this veteran running back that knows where to be." They could have done that for 3 more weeks if Warren stayed out. You know what I mean? So, like, if you're 3-4 flexes deep, or sometimes you just get to week 5 and you got no more running backs left you could start. Yeah. So the NFL happens like that too. Mm-hmm. So the Gainwells and the C-Rods, Chris Rodriguez, those are guys that you've just, as long as you've seen them be good enough on an NFL field, they could come back around given an injury. So if you have the depth, like you got to have a big enough bench for those guys to matter for you. I cut the guy on the Steelers. I just said his name. I cut Gainwell on a short bench, short starting lineup, Dynasty League that Colt and I have together, right, this year. Because we were team was real solid, had some draft picks, had some new young shiny objects, and Gainwell was a cut. I never regretted it. The other day, he played well a couple weeks ago. I was like, oh, that would be nice to plug him in my lineup this week. I probably wouldn't have put him in the lineup, right? Even if he was still on my bench, he wouldn't have been in the lineup that week. He crushes. Next week, hardly nothing, right? But if you got a big starting lineup, that usually coincides with a big bench, and then those guys can really pull some weight for you.
Yeah, I mean, the season is just such a battle, and you're just trying to get through it in some weeks.
That's right.
You just need a replacement here and there, and these guys can be that, or they could take a role and have big chunks, i.e. like Rico Dowdle has. And, God forbid, I don't want to see Allgeier have to, but he could. Or B-Rob could, and we saw Gainwell come in and do it. And we've seen Chris Rodriguez even come in and do it. We've seen Rachaad White come in and do it. So it's just. Well,
Rodriguez looked good down the stretch last year when they needed him to. Right. And so that's why this year I was like, I'll pick him up and take him on, put him on the really deep benches. Well, he was like $1 bid at the end of the draft that we did on the startup auction, because I was like, I just want all the Redskin running backs, Washington running backs, and Rodriguez looked good last year. And guess what? Right. When they give him the ball this year, he looks just fine.
Yeah. And we talked about Dallas. We talked about Dallas being open. We talked about the Chiefs being open. Obviously those aren't going to be the sexiest names you want to go there. But if one of them goes there and is there even B guy? Like, what if Gainwell goes to, or Rachaad White goes to Kansas City and he's their second guy in the rotation, right? I mean,
if he's their new Kareem Hunt, because Kareem Hunt all of a sudden gets old. We're waiting on Kareem Hunt. Seems like he should be old, but he ain't old right this now. Yeah, right he's a free agent because he's somehow he keeps converting all the fourth and shorts and
keeps coming back.
Keeps his job. So, if Rachaad White went to the Chiefs, he would have a dramatic jump in value, because we know that Andy Reid can use that pass catching back.
Absolutely. So there's paths to different ways of seeing success here. And it's changing your outlook of just like, those guys suck and I don't want them. Yeah. And then there's certainly times on your roster where you're like, you're not looking at those guys, but that's not what we're talking. Those kind of teams right now, these are kickers in trades that I'm trying to suck up because the pendulum could swing really fast because of what's going to happen this offseason, potentially, or it could be nothing, it could be terrible. But they're not going to cost you a whole lot here. Wanted to point out Tony Pollard, $2 million dead if they cut him, or it's $9.2 million next season. So like somebody like a Tajay Spears, kind of, there's two sides of this coin. Somebody like a Tajay Spears could be somebody you're looking to pick up through this season. Like just quickly looking at it today, there was a Spears for a 3. I'll roll that wheel around one time, so there's different ways to look at that. There's some restricted free agents. We mentioned the Sean Tucker. Dude, Sean Tucker has looked pretty solid when they give him attempts too. So restricted free agent for him. Keaton Mitchell, somebody who had a little bit of life, got a terrible injury, restricted free agent. You haven't seen him a lot. Every once in a while, you see him out there and you go, oh my God, who's that guy? And I
did that on Sunday.
Yeah.
I didn't know all of a sudden he's got long hair. I was like, who's that? And he's just out there just cutting them up and making big plays happen real quick.
Right. So nobody cares about those guys. And then Demercado is a restricted free agent, but he made a bonehead play, but that guy's got juice, right? I mean, so those are 3 just restricted free agents that definitely nobody cares about. That definitely could be in different spots or have a 2 role on their team really quickly next year. Like Tucker could be replacing Rachaad White and they bring him back. Keaton Mitchell, I don't know what Justice Hill's situation is, but I feel like they should probably keep Keaton Mitchell and get Justice Hill needs to just get the fuck out of my life. And then Demercado should be backing up Trey Benson next year if that's the route they want to go. Connor's still around. They can get out of him for 2.5 dead. An older guy who's been injured, had some health issues. Yeah, that's a risky proposition next year to run into.
They need to bring him back just for the morale in the locker room. Just make him an honorary captain. Don't give him a helmet. Just let him hang out. But I picked up Sean Tucker 2 weeks ago in FFPC for $1. Right, on the rosters, on the waivers, right? Mm-hmm. And Sean Tucker's not on your waivers if you got a real bench, right? If you got in real Dynasty league, FFPC, they're real Dynasty leagues, but the benches are short, and you got a kicker defense, so it gets tight. And I scooped him up. That was a nice move for $1. Yeah, of course, Bucky comes back, does nothing.
He had 50 yards against that Tennessee defense. I think there's only been 1 or 2 singular rushers to go over 50 yards, and he did it. And I mean, I think he's looked good.
Patriots defense.
Patriots. Sorry. Yeah. He's just had a weird end to his career at Syracuse where he was extremely productive with, I don't know if it was a neck injury or what was something weird happened with a physical or blood clots or I don't even remember what it was. A heart thing. I don't know.
It was
all over the place.
Yeah, you did neck, heart, clots.
Just anything that could be detrimental to this man's life.
It made him slide in the draft. Yeah. That's for sure.
Well, he didn't even get picked up, I don't think.
That's what I'm saying.
And he sat out for a minute maybe. But now he's kind of hung around with Tampa. And when they've given him some opportunity, it's like, oh, yeah, that guy's powerful and fast. And then, Dameon Pierce, shout out to him, free agent, and Jerome Ford. Both of those guys have had lights shine on them at some point to have interesting parts and pieces of their career. But again, not the sexiest show of like all these superstars and trading these, but it's like these are guys that I feel like I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on that things could be different and some examples of how things get different. And then we could go back to, I had Jacobs, Monty, and Miles Sanders kind of as a sidebar in this conversation. And like just Jacobs had some good seasons as a Raider, but then kind of faded out, right? And Monty, everybody hated
Raiders faded out.
Right. Everybody hated David Montgomery forever and said that he stunk. And we were just like, nah, he doesn't stink. And then he had a couple of okay spots, and then he goes to a different team, and Monty's awesome. And Miles Sanders was probably the guy that everybody was like, oh, this guy might be the best out of those 3, and he's the worst. So it's just like, look at how all of these different times and positions and these value fluctuations, like nobody gave, even as soon as far as 2 years ago, Jacobs was, remember that game in Brazil? Everybody was like, Jacobs washed.
Yeah.
And he's been a top 5 running back since. And before that, he was just basically a top 10 running back for most of the seasons, but nobody cared. Yeah. And then he had a bad hamstring and the Raiders stunk, and Monty kind of same thing, like just on the Bears, they stunk. If you watched, it was like, he's good, unless you were listening to somebody like Nick Whalen, who's always been a Monty hater and a poor evaluator. And then now everybody's always talking about, oh, well, if Monty wasn't there, Gibbs would be the best running back, and very true. But if Gibbs wasn't there, Montgomery would be the top 5 to 10 running back every year.
Yeah, they just happen to have a thoroughbred and get like one of the top 3 running backs in the entire league that got drafted to be his running mate, and then he did even better than anybody could have expected, and now he's supplanted David Montgomery, which is a very good running back.
Yeah.
So if you're new here, if you're new to Dynasty, or you're just new to this channel and you're new to Casey, like if you told yourself in the last 5 minutes, why are we talking about Chris Rodriguez or Kenny Gainwell? They're probably not going to help your teams, but they could. But just this offseason, he's like, oh, I'm taking ET in the 10th because he's good and people hate him. And I'll take Javonte in the 16th. I'll take Javonte in the 16th. Dowdle, he looked good in Dallas. He looked good at give him a chance, big go. Give him a chance. Oh, Dowdle sucks, man. He just had volume, No, man, he looked okay. He wasn't even drafted. He was a Gamecock, and literally the 3 guys that came back to life this year. Casey told you to draft them in their value spot all off season long. So, I told you to do a lot better stuff than Casey. But the point is,
Caleb Johnson.
I'm just saying, if you're new here and you've been, if you got through the last 10 minutes being like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, we really do know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
we really do.
And I hate there's no expert. There's just they've been doing this a while, and it's just like it's so everyone's so quick to just dismiss guys, and it's just like I've seen this. The next thing you know, you're missing money off your dresser, and your daughter's knocked up. I've seen it 100 times. And it's just this is how this goes, and so. And look, there's a lot of young, very good content creators. Me and Big Co are old. I know we look great still, but much older than a lot of the content creators out of there have been playing a while. And I don't want to be the old man get off my lawn kind of situation, but it's just like people forget about these things so fast. And going back to the Monty and Jacob, I know all those guys had good draft value, draft capital, if you will. But those guys, like I said, Sanders was definitely the king for a minute, and nobody cares. It's just the evolution and how these values go all around. But what's more important is that screw the numbers. Watch what these guys and how they play on the field, and then make that of like, all right, well, contextualize why and how those what they mean, and then look at the numbers and analytics and say. Hey, Chase Brown wasn't efficient that one year, but it was like, if you were watching, it was right there. And, and then it blew up the next season. And then we had to fight the battle. Well, he's like, yeah, he might just be okay, but I think he's a solid player. It's not about the studs are easy to find. Everybody knows who the stud. Again, these fringy players are guys who can just, winning championships is tough. It's hard. You got to get lucky. And some of these guys will help you carry through weeks or carry you through the last 4 games of a season.
Truer words never spoken, my friend. So, winning championships is hard.
It is. Anybody who tells you that this game's easy and figured out is you're either playing with a bunch of jamokes or just is the luckiest guy in the world, because it's difficult. It's hard to get everything to line up.
You can get lucky with that one team and have the right time frame, like our buddy Alex, one of our producers here, good fantasy player. I've been on his podcast. He's been riding with us for like 8 years. He's an awesome dude. He rebuilt a team in one of our leagues 2 years ago, and he had like 7 first-round picks in the best first round to ever have 7 first-round picks, and so he did a full-on rebuild and picked a all-star starting lineup. Right. And now he's crushing the league.
Also been extremely active, though.
Extremely active, and put his hairy nuts out there a couple times to make trades. And sometimes they worked, and sometimes they didn't.
They might be shaved. I don't know. That's just
it could be. I'm just he's a grown ass man now. He ain't young no more, right? But he did the right time. But he built a super team, and and I guarantee you, he could go and put a picture on the screen right now of one of his bad teams. Because I got good teams, I got bad teams too. But like you said, there's no expert. Like I don't know if the young kids these days still go by this rule, but a couple years ago, you had to have 10,000 hours in to be your expert, right? You got 10,000 hours in woodworking. I got 10,000 hours in working outside, zero turn, tree cutting, whatever you want to call it. But you and I both have 10,000 hours in of NFL and fantasy football. For sure.
Right.
No doubt about it. Whether you want to call us an expert or not, probably not. But we got our reps in. And what we've seen is things go around and come around in the highs and the lows. And that's why when somebody shoots up in value and we're like, hey, you could take a second round pick for that guy right now and you won't be upset about it. And then we talk about, oh, yeah, that guy might be worth the first right now. Well, where's Bill Merritt now? Right. And he may come back around.
Sure.
But months ago, we said take a second because you paid a fourth or later, maybe free on waivers after your rookie draft. And then he came around and it was like, well, he's definitely worth a second now. And then it was like, okay, he's worth the first now. And then he's gone. Right. So that literally just played out in front of our eyes. And so like, that's what Casey and I talk about when we say, hey, we just seen it all before.
Yeah. Seen a lot of different things and wrong aplenty, but
for sure.
Just mostly just talking about and there's other guys that would tell you don't ever waste your time with any of these guys, and I just don't see it that way. Of course, I don't want to make a living and a habit of having to do this, but and try to find this is how I'm going to rebuild my team with these. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
it's trying to find little edges here and there of these kind of guys that more than half your league would probably throw away. So. Kind of trying to find the right ones is always going to be the key.
This is the digging deep part, right? And we're in the running backs today, and these guys the reason why they're in the dig deep is because they're not worth shit right now, Casey. So that's why it doesn't feel great to talk about it. But did we not make a video before week 1 about how Mac Jones is valuable in Superflex?
Sure did.
And it didn't feel sexy at the time, but it was like, I feel like I was talking to the wall, but we talked about why it could work out. And it was, he's cheap and he could play. And guess what? Brock Purdy got hurt week 1. Nobody could have seen that coming. And all of a sudden, Mac Jones I just got offered some, decent money for my Mac Jones in one of my Superflex leagues. And I'm like, dude,
doesn't feel good to sell him.
You don't trade quarterbacks that can play in the NFL. Mac Jones is a top 32 quarterback. So guess what?
I can tell you,
he's either starting for some. What? I
can tell you that I just did. I just started reworking my quarterback rankings, and I did not get to 32 starters. Mac Jones is above 32.
Bro, I've been saying that for 5 years. There's not 32 starting quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, I was seeing if I had him pulled up still.
Now is a good opportunity since there's a little bit of fodder here while you're looking on the computer. Go ahead and rebuy Spencer Rattler. Go ahead and go get you some Rattler because the Saints did what they needed to do, which was bench Rattler when he was turning the ball over so they could see the other quarterback because he can't bench him when he's actually on the upswing because he was looking good there for a few weeks and you can't bench him then. And they needed that one time when the ball's not bouncing his way and he looks like shit. They needed that to be like, okay, we need to see Shuck now because we don't want to win any more games. And then Shuck goes out and plays decent. They're like, oh man, we don't want to win any games, but they need to figure out if they got a starting quarterback on their roster. At a minimum, and I said this a couple weeks ago, but at a minimum, Rattler's a high-end backup in this league. So in Superflex, Jacoby Brissett's a starting quarterback in this league right now, Casey. Like, bro, get Spencer Rattler on your Superflex team by the dip. He's free again because he got benched. Go get him for a fourth.
Yeah.
Maybe
he's cheap. He's free. Well,
maybe 2 fours.
That's when these people come in and they've got, and everybody hates on everybody so fast unless you have like the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league. And then, everybody goes through their trials and tribulations and, but it's just like, and then everyone wants to complain. Oh, well, you get, I don't name a quarterback, Jared Goff or whatever. And, he stinks. You got to get rid of him. You can't, and it's just like, dude, there's like 5 ridiculous quarterbacks, and then there's this like a list of other guys who can play. You better fucking hang on to Jared Goff because like this can get so much worse so fast. Look at Minnesota right now. And like everybody hates Trevor so much, and it's like, well, he stinks, and it's just like, yeah, but where's your other option? Yeah, where are they?
I do see some upside still, and what's his name for the Vikings?
JJ McCarthy, of course.
Look, I see the upside, and I see the upside of McCarthy. But sidestepping a 14-2 season and a 4,300 passing yards and 35 touchdowns might not be, looking back on it, hindsight being 2020, might not have been the best play. JJ could have developed on the bench while Sam Darnold took you back to the playoffs.
Dude, there is, I don't know. There's probably 6 or 8 teams right now that would absolutely take Mac Jones over their starting quarterback.
I like it.
Easily, right? I mean, and whether that's the great long-term play or not, but if you told even Carolina right now with Bryce Young, like Miami with Tua, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even Trevor in Jacksonville, these people would, but there's not a whole lot of options. So it's just, you better be glad that your guy can go out there and win some games for you. And it might not be the sexiest thing ever, but there's not a whole lot of options. So I just feel like people get awful greedy real quick with the quarterback play. And it's just, hey, things happen. Daniel Jones.
I threw Jared Goff. I've said it many times. I threw Jared Goff out too. I threw him out, but I guarantee you the Lions wouldn't let him go. The Lions have more 500-yard total offense games in the last couple of years than any team in the league. Jared Goff is top 3 in completion percentage, QBR, yards per game, something. Team scoring is still up in the top 2. Let's go.
Yeah, and look, and
Campbell's calling plays now.
It comes back Mac would replace Tua, mostly just for monetarily situation. But I think if you protect Tua is a good quarterback. I think you could put Tua in San Francisco and he'd be doing Mac Jones like things, right? Yeah. So it's just we're so quick to throw those guys away, and scenarios change. And shit. Like you said, Minnesota let 2 walk out the door. Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's wrap this one up because we got off on the at the end there, but just kind of all tied it together. So anything else you got before we wrap this up?
No, man. I said when we started week 10, you said week 11. I don't know what week it is. I'm just happy.
This would be heading into week 11. We just finished week 10, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I hope you feel better. Take care of yourself. Get some sleep. Get some Zicam in you if that's still a thing. Might be proven to cause cancer by now because everything does. But whatever, get something good in you. Probably just straight up orange juice, right? Yeah. Ingredients, oranges.
Emergency and fruit and vegetables, protein. Standard fare.
Sounds like a normal day to you.
Yeah, it is. All right.
Okay.
We'll catch you next week.
All right.